Good morning, Cayman. How are you guys today? I cannot believe it, but it is Thursday, June the 11th, and we've got tons of good news. We're waiting for our first guest to join us, who's going to be Alric Lindsay. Alric, roll out of bed, roll out, roll out. Um, so a bit of good news. Pension companies, in particular, we know for sure Silver Thatch has started paying people. So, hello, this is wonderful news. I think they started on Tuesday to pay individuals their emergency pension funds. So, this is fantastic news. They start with the US dollar accounts. I think only because that's actually a smaller group that they have to deal with, the persons who've actually requested their payout in US dollars. So, you guys will remember early on that when we had Miss Alice Ramos from Silver Thatch on the program, she had shared that in terms of their company, persons would have the option of choosing what currency they wanted it paid out in. I suspect that that makes sense because there could be persons, for example, that may be overseas, and obviously sending them funds in KYD probably doesn't make any sense, right? So there are apparently less than 100 payouts that are going overseas, which I thought was very interesting. So that means that the vast majority of that money will be for persons who are still here in the Cayman Islands. And in some form or another, it goes back into the local economy. And that certainly means that a lot of those persons would not be directly relying upon NAU or government for any assistance because they do have this money to kind of carry them over, sorry, for a little bit. So, oh, I got a frog in my throat this morning. Let me grab some water. So I think that that's great news. Let me just have a quick look at, right. So that was the first bit of good news that we have for the day. In addition to that, persons who applied to be paid out by check. Now, first of all, a lot of you weren't following directions for whatever reason. And so we do know that some of you provided like credit card numbers for payment, which obviously is impossible. A lot of you have provided incorrect bank account details. So Silver Thatch, to share them, to save themselves a little bit of headache, have decided to cross-reference and cross-check all of the information, the banking details that you provided. So they will be calling you, they will be contacting you just to verify that the information that you have provided is accurate information. So that I think is obviously needed and is a very good thing. So yes, that's fantastic news. And on Tuesday of next week, so Tuesday would be, I think, the 16th of the month, they will actually start with check disbursements. So if you have requested your payment by check, they will start paying that out on on Tuesday, June the 16th, which is next week, Tuesday. So, initially we had heard that payouts would start between the 15th and the 22nd. So Silver Thatch is a little bit ahead of the game. I think most of you have been very pleased with how Silver Thatch has conducted themselves as a pension administrator. I've heard very few queries or complaints about them at all. So I think that that's a great thing. They were on the ball with, as soon as you applied, sending out automated messages that they had received your application, that they were processing your application. Once you approved, you got an approval confirmation email as well. And there are people who remain a bit perplexed, who are part of they may be part of BritK as well, but the constant complaints I'm still receiving relate to Fidelity. And most people have said they've received no confirmation from Fidelity, which I think goes against the law, because I'm pretty sure the law said that they needed to let you know within was it 7 days of that they had received your application, and then within 14 days if you had been approved. And that has yet to happen for a lot of people. I've had people who submitted from the beginning, so now they're going into it's been over a month, and they have not heard a single word from Fidelity. So we're going to reach out to Miss Amy over at the Department of Labor and Pensions and see if perhaps she can address this issue, because I think it definitely needs to be addressed. You know, what are people to do? So let's see what her availability is for perhaps one day next week, and we'll take it from there. So good morning, Louis. Thank you so much for, no, I think it's Lewis. Thank you so much for joining the program. Dawn, thank you very, very much. Jen is joining us, Anne. And here's another bit of good news. I understand that salons are in the process of getting tested, and they have been given the green light. Some of them have already gotten approval. So I've been contacted by one in particular to say that they have gotten the green light to, it looks like they will be reopening on the 22nd. So this is great because my hair is looking crazy. And not only is it looking crazy, I know that in terms of the health of it, it's not in the best of conditions at the moment. So I'm going to need a little bit of color and treatment to get this back to some sort of semblance of normalcy. So I am looking forward to that. And in fact, from last week, I heard that persons were being contacted by the salons because they knew that it was coming. They had been contacted about testing their staff. And yeah, so they've been testing staff, and they have been getting ready in terms of, you know, what would be required of them. And certain salons has, you know, they've already been booking people. So I think this is fantastic news. Trust me. It's gonna be, they're gonna be busy. And again, you know, them being busy helps the economy, puts money into the economy, to be honest. And I think that none of us really can complain about that. They just need to be very, very safe, because obviously in a salon environment, that is a very, what you would call a very intimate environment. So people are touching you, whether it's like massages or doing your hair, whatever, they have to touch you in order to provide these services. So I think they have got to really have their disinfectant stations going, you know, disinfecting their workstations, which salons should be doing this in any event, because as you guys know, you know, you're at risk for catching all sorts of things in a salon, not just coronavirus. So salons they should already know how to disinfect tools and utensils. And certainly now the general environment, in addition to like the foot spa and all these things, need to really be, you know, sanitized and so on. And there's different ways of sanitizing things. I'm really hoping that people look at some of the alternatives to just using all these heavy chemicals, because I don't really feel like the heavy chemicals are helping us in any way, like in terms of our health. So we might be getting saved from coronavirus and dying from something else, if you know what I mean. Sorry. So hopefully. So good morning, Alric. We're waiting on you, my dear, to join the program. Anne, Jen, Irvelin's here for it. Pato, Donovan says, good morning, my peeps. I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you, Donovan. We wish you an amazing day as well. Irvelin said some have already been tested. Yes, they've definitely been tested. And helpers are next on the list. I'm actually going to post up a story about that as soon as the show is done this morning. Juanita wants to know if BAF has started paying out as yet. We don't know, but we can check because we do know someone at BAF. So let me just have a moment here. So yeah, I mean, so far I've heard of pension, and then one person mentioned FCIB, which I didn't even know that they had a pension plan. They're certainly not one of the larger ones, but given that pension and Chamber of Commerce are the two largest plans in the country with over 20,000 members each. I think that that is significant that Silver Thatch has started paying out already. So the other sort of big thing from yesterday that I want you guys to be aware of is that there has been a recall of a certain drug called metformin. And metformin is a diabetes controlled drug. So it controls like your sugar levels and stuff if you're diabetic. And it's actually very, very popular and highly prescribed. And even if you're pre-diabetic, sometimes they will start you on metformin because it does tend to help people lose weight and stuff as well, which goes a long ways to getting your diabetes under control. So there has been a recall of what they call the extended release tablets, ER tablets, 500 milligram. And apparently there is some concerns about contamination of the drug. I'm going to put the link in here in case you guys missed it. There's been some concerns about contamination that could potentially make it cancerous. So imagine taking a drug to combat diabetes and then finding out that it is actually cancerous. That's no bueno, no bueno, not at all. So that is certainly not good. Just another quick update before we have Alric join us. There was a big drug bust the last couple of days, over 750 pounds of marijuana, 2 men arrested from West Bay. So good job to the Cayman Islands Coast Guard. And kudos to them for apprehending those individuals who tried to take off and run. There's scammers on the loose. You know, we're always advising you guys about scammers. So there's a couple scammers on the loose. And the latest one is targeting the education minister, and all of the ministers and premier and everybody has had their fair chance. And, you know, one of the reasons these scammers will use someone like the Honorable Juliana O'Connor Connolly is because some people, no matter what the text says, once they see her photo up on it and they say, oh, Juliana O'Connor Connolly, they're automatically going to believe that it's legit and believe whatever it says. And that is definitely not the case here. So what you'll want to do is ensure that you actually read this information. Let me just do a quick check on something here. So in this case, this company is pretending to be this company is this whatever this is, publication or whatever, we'll use that term very, very loosely, has a special report that says Juliana O'Connor Connolly's latest investment has the government and big banks terrified. And so it goes on to talk about, you know, her supposedly endorsing some Bitcoin situation. Couple things here that make this story very, very obviously fake is, and this is where people need to be very discerning. And, you know, when they're reading things, first of all, the URL link at the top makes it very clear that this is not actually the Compass. So they have basically stolen the Compass's, I guess, logo, and they have ran with that. I don't know what it is about the Compass lately, but they have been hit a couple times, quite interestingly enough, by fraudsters and by persons willing or hoping, I guess, to capitalize on the Compass brand and the Compass name. So there've been a number of more recent, you know, sort of fraud-related articles or fake news articles that appears to come from the Compass, but in fact, it has nothing to do with the Compass at all. So you guys need to be vigilant. You need to make sure that you're looking at things very, very carefully. So I'm going to show you a perfect example of this. Here's this first one. It says opportunities now for all. So this is how it shows up initially on Facebook. And do you see how it's trying to, again, use brand names like Cayman National Bank in the background, Juliana's picture. It says last updates. So the things that you need to look for very, very closely with these fraudsters is a lot of them are overseas and English is not their first language. So what that means is they make a lot of mistakes. So even if you're not the best at grammar, hopefully you pick up on the fact that last updates is completely incorrect. It would say latest updates, if anything. And then it says opportunities now for all. And it has this counter, what is it? countrypoint.myshopify.com. It's a sponsored ad, which is another big thing to be looking for. That's not always a red flag, but it can be. And then, of course, this link, when you start thinking that this is a Compass article, that link has nothing to do with myshopify.com, has nothing to do with the Compass. So here it is again. They use the Compass headline, special report. They're writing it like it's a story, which is incredibly interesting because, again, they're trying to capitalize on the fact that you're going to believe that it is the Compass and that you're going to trust what it is that they're saying. So the other thing that they do is they make reference to the fact that she has been interviewed by someone from Cayman 27. Now, if you've been alive for a minute and you've been paying attention, you would know that Cayman 27 has not been operational since 2019. Yeah, so they've been long gone. And that's another, red flag that something is wrong here, because there's no way that Cayman 27 could have been interviewing anyone last week because they are now a defunct company. So here's the next page. There's a number of pages in this. And again, pick up on the fact that where it says Cayman Compass, they can't even spell Compass right. So they have Compass with one S. So like I said, a lot of times English isn't their first language. So I don't know if they're using like translator software or whatever, but they're getting it wrong. So, they basically copied and pasted her bio a little bit and talking about how she's made a name for herself as a brash, straight talker who doesn't mind being honest about how she makes her money. Well, that doesn't sound like the Juliana O'Connor Conley that we know. She's never said how she made her money, except, everybody knows that she's a politician. So they go on to say that last week she appeared on Cayman 27 and announced a new wealth loophole, according to this, which she says can transform anyone into millionaire within 3 to 4 months. Wow, that would be super fast. So they're trying to use her name, her good reputation, and look at the other big error here. So again, this is where you pick sense from nonsense, people. Remember, this show is all about common sense and telling you the cold hard truth. It says National Cayman Islands Bank. There is no such bank. There's no such bank as National Cayman Islands Bank. But remember in the first slide, they actually use in the background Cayman National Bank. And now in the article, they're talking about National Cayman Islands Bank. So they're not the best fraudsters. They talked about Cayman 27 host Mona Lisa Tatum. I don't know when Mona Lisa was a host, but it has been a minute. As far as I know, Mona Lisa was even a host when Cayman 27 shut down. She hasn't been a host for like many years. So, and then there's another, right. So in this picture, notice how in the background, they're using a Cayman 27 picture of somebody else, not of even Mona Lisa. So there's lots of contradictions in this. It just takes a little bit of common sense, but we know that people sometimes fall for these situations. And so we want you guys to continue to be vigilant on that front, because scammers are wanting to, help you part with your hard-earned money. And I suspect they've been probably watching the news and they know that all of you guys are getting a pension payout. And you know what that means? They're looking to grab your pension money from you. So don't do it, folks. Be smarter than them. All right, let us have Alric Lindsay now join the conversation. Mr. Alric, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I cannot hear you. There you go. I got you now. Yes, your audio just came up.
It's working now. 1, 2, 3.
You keep going and coming on the audio front. I'm not quite sure why that is, so just have a little check of that while I look through some comments.
All right,
Debbie, good morning.
Test. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I'm hearing parts of it. So I hear like mic check, and then I don't hear the 1, 2, 3, but I see you saying the 1, 2, 3. So just double check that for me. Anne, good morning. Anne says, I know of a few people who take metformin, including my own mother, complains about how badly it makes them feel, as well as some complain about going to the toilet frequently. And of course, Anne, as you will know, every single drug has some sort of effect, whether it's aspirin or metformin or anything else. So double check her prescription to see what type of metformin she's taken. If it's this early release metformin, I would contact her primary care physician immediately. You got to be careful sometimes coming off of certain drugs. So, contact her primary care physician and inquire about what she needs to do. Louis says, good morning, my people. God is good all the time. Thank you. Lisa Whitaker, the Compass should take note of these fake news using their name. They should, and I'm sure they are. I just don't know what they can do about it, is the question. So, yeah, so she goes on to say, not everyone will understand this news publication. We're hearing both. So hearing both of what? I'm not sure.
Can you hear me now?
I can. There's a little bit of feedback now, but I can hear you. I think what it is, do you have a headset by any chance?
No, I couldn't afford one.
Oh, Alric. So hopefully the feedback isn't too bad for our listeners. It's less of an issue for me, I think, but the listeners might be hearing it double because I think they hear me and then they hear like your thing as well. So let's play it by ear. Let's see how it goes. You guys can let us know in the comment section if you're having a hard time. Anne says that she's hearing you loud and clear, so that's good. Leslie, I think that's what you were referring to when you were saying that you were hearing both. Okay. Alric, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
So Alric is here this morning. He's gonna be joining us. Looks like he's got a friend that he's telling, I'm on air. Alric is gonna be joining us here. Yeah, it's always funny when you've got things in the background. I'm actually thinking of setting up a completely different studio in another room of the house where I can have like a truly dedicated space. Because right now I'm kind of cross sharing, as you guys can see, my space. So I'm making some moves to kind of have, insulated room, a padded room that I can do my show from. But Alric, thank you so much for joining us. Now, this segment this week is called Who You From. And yesterday we had such an amazing and interesting discourse with Kathy Frazier and Oliver Watler. Now, if you missed the show, Miss Kathy was saying that in their Cayman's Connections group, which, by the way, I am going to join, that someone had mentioned who I was from and what my connections are. And so she actually took the time yesterday afternoon to send me some information that I thought was amazing. First of all, I was driving when I saw her message, and she sent a link to my late aunt who passed away a number of years ago. And they were talking about this Find the Grave website, which has apparently been very, very useful for people who are looking to like do ancestry tracing and stuff like that. Immediately when I saw that link, I saw that photo of my aunt, it literally brought me to tears as I was driving because, my aunt raised me and I do consider her for all of the years I was with her, to have been very much a mother figure to me. So I was taken aback. I think I was so surprised to see it. I'm just going to show it here on screen for a second. I was just shocked to see this. So this is my Aunt Lottie. So you guys know when I talk about Aunt Lottie's pearls of wisdom, this is precisely what I'm talking about. So I haven't clicked on the link yet, but this talks about her, you know, when she died in 2015, when her service was, and so on. And there's the picture. There's Aunt Lottie's picture. So this is so incredibly amazing. Apparently, there's a U.S. naturalization. I mean, it's just amazing the documents that people can find, particularly in the U.S., who have, you know, been keeping historical documents for a very long time. So sometimes it was when you came off of a ship, you know, they recorded your information, not so much for the African persons, because obviously they came off as slaves, so they were considered property, and there would have been no reason to actually record any of their information. And that's part of, you know, our history as well. So my aunt actually moved to the States when she was a bit younger, and so this document here has been found, which demonstrates her naturalization process, you know, when she became an American citizen. So of course, by the time I, you know, would have known my aunt and would have met her, she was long an American citizen at that point. And yeah, I mean, this is just absolutely amazing. And then this is what I didn't know. So I want to really thank Ms. Kathy for sharing this information, because apparently I might have some connection to Ebankses, which I'm really quite shocked at, to be honest, because I didn't know that. So big up to my brothers and sisters, probably in West Bay, all my cousins. So this is why I totally understand Kathy's point. When, yeah, Juanita, I suspect you'd be hearing a little bit of feedback, but just bear with us. So Irvelin says it's loud, we're hearing your feedback. Well, unfortunately, there's nothing on my end. If Alric had a headset, he wouldn't need to play through his speakers, and I think that's in fact what you're actually hearing. So Alric, we're going to encourage you to get a headset for next time.
Can we start a fund?
Alric is so funny. Yes, we can start to get Alric a headset fund. All right, so apparently, now this makes a whole lot of sense here, where my aunt even got her name from. So look at this. There's somebody named Lottie Vienna Ebanks who married Aaron Lavender Solomon. So this now would have been great-grandparents based on what I'm aware of. And again, this is all new information to me. I don't know who Aaron Lavender Solomon is. I've never heard of a Lottie Vienna Ebanks. So I need to find this Lottie Vienna Ebanks. Because this, like I said, is completely new information to me. It means that we actually have some probably very close connections to the Ebanks families. So that's amazing. And then they had a daughter named Jane Louisa Solomon, which that would be my paternal grandmother. And then she had Alric, which he always spelled it with a K, but I'm very much aware that a lot of persons would obviously drop the K off of his name. And he was born in 1923. And then that is my father. And then there was Samuel Douglas Solomon, who's born in 1926. And then Lottie, which I need to double check what year she was born. Well, she was 86 when she passed away. So they didn't have her full name, but her name was actually Lottie Hamilton. So it's interesting, and this is a start for me. So at least now I know, going back to a great grandmother on the paternal side. So I'm going to start some digging. I think I'm going to do a family tree. I'm going to do some DNA testing in the coming year, because I want to know who I for too. You know, it's kind of like, you know, I think we should all do this. So Alric, who are you for? That's what I want to know. Who are you for?
Well, I think it's a little complicated.
Listen, you wouldn't be a companion if it wasn't complicated, trust me. So let's start with maybe your parents.
So that's complicated also.
Okay. All right.
Well, it's one of the reasons that, I do understand, why some kids have a hard time in Cayman, and you have, single mothers having a hard time, single dads having a hard time. So I kind of, come with that experience, So my mother is Vivia Thompson from Jamaica, and her parents are, well, so Vivia Thompson from Jamaica, and my real father's name is Basil Lindsay, but I was actually adopted by Osborne Thompson. So hope you're paying attention.
Yeah, it's already getting a little confusing, but go on.
Yeah. So my mother, Vivia Thompson, her mother is Violet Facey. Her father is James Thompson. My grandmother Violet's father is David.
Now, Facey, are they they're from Cayman or?
Jamaica.
Okay. All right.
So my grandmother's father is David Facey from Jamaica, and my grandfather's father is David Thompson from Jamaica. So when we look at the Cayman side, I was adopted as Alric Lindsay Thompson. Later on, I only use the first half of my last name, which is Lindsay. In high school, I never used the full adopted name. So most people in high school know me as Alric Thompson. But when I got older, I dropped half of my name and just kept Alric Lindsay.
Any particular reason why? I mean, it's unusual, first of all, for guys to have hyphenated names. So I don't know if that was it, but
it's
was it
not
complicating
really,
your life?
yeah, but it was an adopted name. So it's a legal adoption. That's what my name was like that, was hyphenated.
I see. Okay. So Lindsay is the blood family name and Thompson was the adopted name?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. I think I'm following.
Okay. I hope so. Let's do a diagram to help you. In my case, I didn't know my real father, so I don't have that history. But your show is encouraging me to now go and do that. What is it called? Genealogy?
Yes.
So
have you ever, let's just back up a little bit here, Alric, because I think that this is important to discuss as a young man. There are a lot of people who don't know who they're for, especially fathers. And obviously, it's a little bit more challenging for a mother to disappear from a child's life, but that's not impossible. You guys might remember that young lady that we had in our show last week talking about the situation in Minneapolis, Gogo. She had previously appeared in her show the year before looking for her biological parents because her mom basically went to Georgetown Hospital, had this baby girl, which they named baby Sarah, and walked out of the hospital and left her. So Gogo has no clue who her mother or father are. And she's been digging. We made some headway, but unfortunately, the one kind of solid lead that she had, which is a potential mother out of Jamaica, they were not willing to admit that this child is potentially their family member. And it could be that, she isn't. We're still trying to maybe hear some more details on that. But it has to impact your identity, Alric, when part of your connection or your legacy is missing. Have you, as a child, did you ever see like other kids growing up with both parents, even if they weren't together, but at least they knew who their dad was? And did that impact you in any way? I know you obviously said that you had an adopted father, so it seems like you had a stepfather in your life. But how did not having a biological father there, or even to this day as an adult, not knowing who your biological father is? How have you processed that information?
I mean, I think that it was hard, but I think also it's not who made you that's the most important. It's the person that actually supported you. And so I didn't really have a stepfather because legally, under the adoption law, you take the domicile of your father, your adopting father, and so I recognize the adopted father all my life. So yeah, it was very hard. I think as a child, I guess. Well, I didn't initially know as a child. I gained that knowledge later in high school. Um, so when that was explained to me, of course, it was very hard because you grew up thinking one thing and then you find out another thing. But in the end, it doesn't change much because what you have to look at, is who did support you and who did love you and who was there for you. So obviously there are two sides of, well, they say there are three sides of every story. My side, your side, and the truth. That's what they say. So I think as a child, yes, I did see, some friends that had both parents, but as a child, I didn't know the whole story, so it didn't impact me. It may have impacted me if I knew the whole story when I was a child. But the reason it didn't impact me is because, um, you know, the person who adopted me, um, I didn't make any distinction between being adopted and who the biological father was. So I I did feel different when I got older and I found out what the real story was, and I guess I started to think back on how things could have been different if I had known my biological father, and if I wasn't raised by the adopting Caymanian father. But you have to live life for what it is, and so as much as I may have wanted to go back and experience that other side and get to know that other side, that is not the reality. That is not the history. The history is, I did go through a legal adoption, and my mother got married, and I was raised by Darley Thompson. So that's really the only person I can recognize. I when you told that story just now about this child not knowing what their background is, I can totally get that, although I didn't experience it as a child. I experienced it at an older age, because at an older age is when my discovery was made. But I totally get it, and this is one of the reasons why when kids need stuff in Cayman, I don't bother trying to understand why the father isn't there, or why the mother is having trouble. I just try to help. So there's a deeper part of why I'm involved, or try to be involved in giving, and also in charity, because I feel like there are probably kids that need help, but are probably not voicing it, and or probably just find themselves in a set of circumstances they don't understand. So I think we have to appreciate that, those kids may not understand the complexities of their family or their circumstances. They may not understand. It's not really our job to figure everything out for them, but it is our job to help provide an environment, that is safe and where they have access to education, et cetera, et cetera. So from my perspective, because of my own complex background, I feel like I'm more understanding, and I can sympathize with the difficulties that a lot of kids might be having in Cayman because of their own complex backgrounds, not knowing the real father, or not having a connection with their real father. I totally get it. It's not for me to question it. It is for me to accept things how they are and try my best to make situations better for those, families or single families or children I come in contact with. So when it comes to my adopting father, Darley Thompson, his father is Darley Solomon. And I saw some Solomons in your list, in your history. So his father is Darley Solomon. Darley's father is James Louis Solomon. And his mother is Harriet Mercedes Jervis. And so that's the father side. That's a grandparent. That's a grandfather side. So just to repeat it, my adopting father is Darley Thompson. His father is Darley Solomon. Darley Solomon's father was James Louis Solomon. Darley Solomon's mother was Harriet Jervis. My grandmother was Selma Thompson. Selma's father was Felix Thompson. And Selma's mother was Irene Thompson, nee Eden. So I think when I do this deeper exercise that you're going to do as well, I think we might have some surprises, even on the foreign sides of the family. I think there might be some surprises, but I am going to do the exercise that you're doing and try to go deeper into the history to see, how complex this web actually is, Can't hear you.
Sorry, someone was just mentioning that today's your birthday, so I wanted to say happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. My birthday was yesterday,
It was yesterday. Okay.
but thank you. I'm 26 now, so
Somehow I'm doubting that storyline, but okay. Now, Alric, you have a daughter as well.
Yep.
This little young lady. I'm going to pull up a picture here because I just found the photo. She is so cute. This is your only child that you're aware of?
That is my only child.
No, I always say that to men in particular because 10 years later, some random woman pops up and says, "Oh, by the way," and you're like, "What?" I always say that you're aware of because men may not always be aware, but you think that there's only one. So look at this little cutie pie. What is her name and how old is she?
Her name is Brooke Guy, and she is turning 3 in July.
Wow, she is too cute. Oh my goodness. I was actually reminiscing yesterday. I have a 3-year-old who's turning 4 in August. And yesterday, Facebook has a way of popping up these memories, which I actually quite like. I'm going to show you, ironically, the one that popped up for me dating back to 2013, which goes a little bit to what you were saying just a minute ago. But one of my memories that popped up yesterday was about my daughter when she was only 10 months old. So 3 years ago, which is like mind blowing that that amount of time has passed already. Um, but it was her first time trying a French fry. And so I had posted that with her photo on social media. And of course, she was like half falling asleep with her bottle. But we went to the first annual Crawfish Festival, which I don't think they've had one since then, at Grand Harbor. It was a lot of fun, actually. And at that event, she got to try her first French fry. And of course, French fries to this day, 23, but is one of her favorite foods, as I'm sure is the case with most kids. Um, so Alric has a daughter. Now tell us a little bit about where is your daughter? I understand she's actually in Belize, right?
Yeah, my daughter is in Belize. So as you know from my court case, you know, I did travel quite a bit, and one of the places I did travel was
Now,
Belize.
just to be clear, because some people may not know anything about your court case or what you're talking, what you're making reference to. So Alric ran in the last general election, and one of the questions that came up for Alric is whether or not he had maintained his residency, so to speak, here in the Cayman Islands. So out of that, it became obvious that he was traveling back and forth and so on. So that's what court case he's referring to, not a capital murder court case or anything else. So it was in relation to the elections, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I won that case against the government, and you know, I didn't have a break in residence because I have a business here, and you know, going back and forth
Mhm.
business. So you know, we can have another show on that topic because I think um, you know, the businessmen and businesswomen that travel frequently to do business. You know, they might be out of Cayman for long periods of time. The people that do purchasing, you know, the directors in big firms, the partners at big firms that have to travel and do marketing and business development, they might be out of Cayman for significant periods of time. You may have people who are working for overseas companies and who are trying to get the international experience that they tell us that we need to get jobs at Cayman. So you shouldn't hold that international experience against anyone either. So anyway, that's a topic for another show. But basically, uh, I have a very good friend from Belize, and we studied accounting together at university in Florida. And I went to visit him a few times, and uh, when I started to learn Spanish, basically, um, I was traveling in Central America around Belize. So you know, I was in Honduras, I was in Dominican Republic, ended up in Belize, which the primary language is English, but Spanish is still spoken. There are a lot of people from Salvador, Belize, Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, living,
Mhm.
and so you know their tongue is Spanish. So
Mhm.
you know was exposed to a lot of those people. But so basically, when I was spending some time in Belize, um, I a friend of mine introduced me to a lady, and she was representing Belize, and prefer not to say her name. um,
Mhm.
and so we had a child, and I spent the first sort of 6 months with her in Belize, and at the time I was working for a law firm, and the law firm was allowing me to work remotely, and unfortunately, the law firm wanted my physical presence in Cayman, and so I had to come back to Cayman, and then I was just back and forth, you know, visiting my daughter in Belize. You know, it's an interesting story, you know, because
Mhm.
for a man, I can say I did not want to repeat the same sort of story that happened to me.
Mhm.
I didn't want to just disappear. But you know, the reason I had to leave Belize was because of work. Uh,
Mhm.
My physical presence was requested in Cayman, for whatever reason the firm had. But I mean, I'll be honest, it does bother me, that
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes feel I'm repeating the story,
Mm-hmm.
being so far away. And, I do video calls every morning and every night. So every morning my daughter wakes up, she calls me. Um, and then, before she goes to bed, she usually calls me. Well, sometimes I get like 30 calls and she just hangs up because I don't know. I think she thinks it's funny. She'll call, hang up. She just started laughing and hang up. Uh,
Yes.
but the video call is not the same as
Yeah.
being there in person. But I mean, I would love for her to be here and to grow up here, but
Mhm.
I don't have control over that. That has to be something that's you sit down and you discuss and with the other parent and try to see what is most beneficial to my daughter in the long term. But I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect, and uh, I guess I don't wish to be perfect. I think
Mm-hmm.
I wish that everything would just go the right way and everyone is happy, but
Mm-hmm.
circumstances in life, and I am partial to blame. You know, um, I could have more patience. I could have tried to work things out. All those things. I'm guilty. I'm guilty of all those things. I could have tried harder. I guess at the time,
Mm-hmm.
work.
In terms of the relationship with her mom is what you're speaking about.
Yes, yes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
considering what my background is and not knowing all the details of my background,
Yes.
I I really want the best for my daughter, and I really want her to have two parents who are
Mm-hmm.
physically present in her life. But
Mm-hmm.
circumstances, I live in Cayman, she lives in.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, she's gonna spend parts of every year here, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still not the same. Someone who has both parents physically there to guide them on a daily basis. I mean,
Yes.
I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And I got to tell you, Alric, even just, as you're talking, I'm kind of reflecting on my own situation as well, because I grew up where my parents were actually not married. And so it was a little bit easier in the sense that back in those days in Cayman, I mean, Cayman was very small. I recall seeing my dad actually more than I saw my mom. I mean, because he was very present. And I think part of that was because he was his own businessman. So he had greater flexibility than having to work for someone else and have to go out to, 2 or 3 jobs, like set hours or whatever. But he was one of those individuals, regardless of what his faults were, and I know they were many, he was very much present. He was there and he would, pick you up from school and, take you for ice cream. And one of the fondest childhood memories that I have is actually my father taking me to the Islander Hotel, and they had a little bar, poolside bar, and a little pool area. And I would sit there and eat ham and cheese sandwiches because I guess that was my favorite at the time. I don't know why. I always remember ham and cheese sandwiches. And he would sit down at the bar, I'm sure, having a drink. And so that was like one of the fun things that I remember, doing with him. And, it's unfortunate that because of circumstances, I don't really have any childhood memories of my own mother. So when people say to me, sometimes they ask me about my mom, obviously I know who she is and, you know, um, she's doing well and she's got, 7, 8 other kids or whatever. But for me personally, it does pose a bit of a challenge because, especially back in those days where you didn't have access to phone as easily, you didn't have access to definitely no video calling. I didn't develop that kind of maternal bond that we all would hope to have with our actual mother. So unfortunately, I have been placed in a situation even to this day where, I recognize who she is. There's a certain level of respect there because of who she is, but the bond simply doesn't exist. And I know that there are people who struggle to understand that. And I don't often really speak on it because, like I said, I had a mother figure. You know what I'm saying? So I get for some people, the loss is so much more significant when they don't have a parent. But I didn't really feel that. I felt like my aunt, I moved to the States at a very young age and she filled that void immediately. My uncle was there. So I had a family nucleus from the time I had just turned 9 years old. So maybe in the early years, I wasn't always cognizant of what was going on within the family. And, even now there's sometimes I reflect back on trying to recall some of my earliest memories. And I find a lot of that is actually a complete wash. Like I don't really remember a whole lot before I left Cayman in any event. And I don't know if that's the brain's way of kind of, coping. It's a coping mechanism sometimes to not be able to remember certain details. Um, but it is what it is. And I think all of us as Caymanians have a history. We have stories that sometimes are very similar, sometimes they're very divergent. And that's why I always feel a lot of personal pain when I hear of children growing up in dysfunctional families and families that are creating another generation of challenges for, you know, more children, because I can see how that definitely shapes our lives. And it takes a lot to come out of any situation like that and really try to, as you say, do better for the next generation. And part of doing better means that for yourself, you've got to set certain standards. You can't be repeating history because then the next generation is going to be put in a lot of the same circumstances, the same situation. And, a lot of people don't necessarily know this about me, but my friends do. One of the big things, and for me personally, was I was refusing to have a child out of wedlock. I mean, it wasn't about really a religious thing or whatever, but it was really about trying to create a family environment and a family dynamic that allowed a child to be born into very a loving situation, but also a situation that was stable. Because I think stability in the lives of children is really, really critical. So I totally comprehend your desire to have a two-parent household for your daughter. And I think there are many benefits to that you simply cannot replace any other way. And by extension, I also appreciate you recognizing the need in our community where a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have that. And so because they don't have that, there will be gaps in their lives, whether it's financial, uh, social, emotional, whatever. And you have been trying your best to try to fill some of those gaps wherever possible, some of those needs that those children may have. So thank you for that. And, I totally understand. So as you're speaking, I'm understanding exactly where it is that you're coming from. So Cynthia says that, good morning. I wanted to say that I truly admire Mr. Lindsay for being so kind with people here in Cayman. I call him an angel. And for those of you who may not know, Alric spends a lot of his time, contributing to the community in so many different ways. He's an active participant or volunteer for the Meals on Wheels program. He works closely with the food bank. So every single day, practically, Alric is out there 7 days a week delivering food to the elderly. He's taken money out of his own pocket and buying food for people to prepare so that meals can be delivered, hot meals can be delivered to vulnerable members of our community. Alric is also very much involved in a program right now with himself and Michael Miles. I always want to say Myers, you know. And Michael and Alric are seeing to it that children who are in need are getting laptops donated to them, especially during this COVID-19 time when they need to be able to do their homework remotely. So Juanita says, a man with a heart of gold. I admire Alric. May God continue to work with you, Alric, and protect you always. Have a blessed day. So Morna and Susan, Miss Sue, sorry, have tuned in to the show this morning. And we also have Jevy, who's going to be joining us here in a second. And we're going to find out a little bit more about who you're from Jevy as well. So Alric, you did provide us, it looks like you might have a little bit of a head start here on your family tree. You're way ahead of me anyway. With knowing some of the persons, this would be on your paternal side, right? Oh, sorry. Hold on, Alric. My apologies. I think I had muted you. Oh, you've muted yourself, it says.
Yeah, this is my adopted Caymanian side.
Okay. All right. So yes, a lot of Solomons in there. James Lewin Solomon, Robert Solomon. You had a Martha Stewart in the family? Is that the Martha Stewart? There's a Rachel Martha Stewart there. Some Jervises, Fredericks. Wow. So as we know, all Caymanians are eventually related. There's a Yates in there. So you got a little bit of a head start of knowing who you are and who these people are.
Well, the research is not complete. I mean, obviously, I think it's a little complex because, you know, this is the only side that I know. So for me, it's a little complex. So there's probably another tree out there, which is biological. But I just wanted to say that it's not always like the mother that walks away or the father that walks away. You know, sometimes it could be something simple as, well, not simple, but someone could be in prison, you know, or you know, an accident and they could have died. So there are different reasons that one parent could be missing.
Yes, for sure. That's for sure.
You know, when I was growing up, I didn't have a void. I wasn't missing meals. You know, even when others burned down our house in Windsor Park, we still had a place to stay because someone provided us a place to stay. When you look at all the struggles, I was still very fortunate because it seemed like someone was always there for support. And I think for me, that's very important.
Right.
Support is very important. So
that sounds like another show about someone burning down your house.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's why no matter how I feel personally about the relationship, I always make sure that, you know, I make my monthly payments to the court and Belize, and I always make sure, like right now, my daughter is going to enter preschool, and you know, I'll make sure that that's covered, so that you can't say that because of difficulty, you know, I didn't get an education. So I just want to make sure, you know, she does have a good education. And I mean, ideally, it would be the best school as possible. And for me, when it comes to education, you know, I don't really think, I think I should make that sacrifice for education, even though it might cost more. I mean, luckily, you know, the Cayman dollar is a little stronger than the Belize dollar. So, you know, if she was here, it would be more expensive if she was here. But being in Belize, it's the Cayman dollar goes a little further. But you know, I'm just doing what I need to do, you know, financially in terms of keeping up my obligation to the court and you know, assisting with my part with education. You know, I don't know what it's like for a single mother and how hard that job is. I think some men just some men don't understand
Mm-hmm.
what a woman goes through as a single.
Mm-hmm.
I only can hear the stories, you know. For example, yesterday I was talking to a single mom in West Bay, and it's hard, when you see that like her children didn't have access to the Zoom calls um,
Mm-hmm.
to do schoolwork, and but because of my own experience, I know it's not for me to judge this person. It's for me to say how can I help? How can I?
Mm-hmm.
Because that child could be a doctor.
Yeah.
That child can become an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can help to improve the environment, um, then I think that the parent has something more to work with. Um,
Right.
you know, so when I see situations like that with a single mom, I see that it's hard,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know what her emotions are on a daily basis. I don't know how many days she didn't eat.
Mm-hmm.
She had to make sure that there's food for her child. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a man doesn't know, all those struggles that
Mm-hmm.
a single mother has. I
Yeah.
don't know all the struggles.
Yeah.
Like I say, life. If everything was perfect and great, everyone would be happy and there'll be no complaints. But
Mm-hmm.
perfection is not the reality. We
Mm-hmm.
I'm not perfect. I have to live as an imperfect man. I have to live as a person who doesn't know everything, as a person who continues to learn, continues to understand, continues to try to be open to new ideas, and continue to be open to understanding what other people's circumstances are. I wish I knew it all, but I don't. Just an imperfect person, and I just don't know everything. Um, I wish I could just.
Well, Alric, I must say, despite you saying that you don't know everything, people should know that you are both a CPA and an attorney at law. So you know a lot. You may not know everything, and I don't think any of us can claim to know everything. But we're going to bring Jevy in the conversation here in a minute. Just a few quick comments. I wanted to just share this memory from 2013 that popped up on my Facebook page this morning, kind of in light of what Alric is saying. And I said, it's not enough that I succeed in life if others around me are failing. And I think that more of us need to take that approach because, it's selfish to think that you're the only person in life that matters and everything you do is about you. When you look around, if your communities and other families are failing, then that kind of doesn't make any sense even because you can't be the sole success in the world. So I think when you pull others up along with you, you help to elevate yourself as well. And this was, I don't know why I was having this thought back from 7 years ago, but I was. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys. Just a few quick comments here, and then we're going to speak to Jevy. Thomas says that you all need to change some laws down there. I don't know where Thomas is from when he says down there. Lots of people locked up for ganja seems very hypocritical. And he goes on to talk about the guys caught yesterday were poor and needed to survive. Now they're going to jail for just ganja. So I don't know, Thomas, how much you know about our laws here in the Cayman Islands, but people don't go to jail for just ganja anymore. There's a lot of programs in place that give second chances for drug offenses. However, when you're caught with a boat full of 700 plus pounds of ganja, that's a very different situation. And that isn't about just poverty and trying to survive. A lot of these guys who are running the ganja trade, which that shipment probably came in from Jamaica, are very heavily involved in other criminal activity. And most of those boats do not just bring in ganja, but they bring in other drugs, and they also bring in guns into this country and contribute to the gang society here, which is something that we want to very much remove. So as you guys remember, the last shipment that came in earlier, I think last month, contained a couple firearms as well as ammunition. So when people talk about, oh, it's just ganja, they don't have a true understanding of what's actually happening in this country. And if you sit down and you have a spliff or you have a smoke, whatever, you're not going to jail for that anymore. But when you're in the importation business, that's a very different situation. And yes, you can expect to, when you get caught, that you're going to go to jail. Young men have a choice even when you grow up poor. I grew up in poverty. Alric grew up in poverty. We're going to speak to Jevy here. I don't know how much poverty Jevy grew up in, but there were days that I didn't know, even when I was in university, as an adult, so to speak, I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. Did that lead me to steal from people? Did that lead me to, sell drugs? No, that led me to asking for help if I needed it, working my ass off, because that's how I knew that you could get somewhere in life, legitly working my ass off and not trafficking in drugs or sex or prostitution or anything else. So, Thomas, we all have a choice, and the choices that you make impact the outcome of your life. And so I'm not one that holds people's hands, because I know what it is to have a very rough, tough life. I'm sure people have had it rougher and tougher than me, so I'm not claiming to, have suffered the most. But at the same time, I think that we always find convenient excuses to not live our best lives and to sometimes not do the right thing. So Grace says, it's Sally Isaac, by the way. Yes, I think she uses another account, Sally. I am going by my middle name and married name. Okay. And Sally says that you will be an amazing father and you're making a difference. So thank you so much. Class of 1990. So Sally and Alric went to school together. Jevy, good morning.
Hello. How are you?
Up?
Not as
Everybody
good
kind
as
of
you.
has the COVID look, man. I tell you, Alric needs
I
to
know,
fix
right?
that. I need something done. I'm gonna have to resort to wearing wigs here in a minute.
I already have
Get
my
myself
appointment.
some
I
high
already have my
premium.
appointment booked.
Yeah. I need this high quality weave. I always see these ghetto fabulous girls talking about the 24 inches of whatever. But Jevy, you got your full beard going there. The facial hair is definitely in play. At least with your hair, I think you can put a little bit of mousse so it doesn't quite look as puffy. So what's
Mine
been
has
going
a
on,
little.
Jevy?
I found some very fantastic. Like I have curly hair, and I only recently found out about what is called hair lotion. I didn't know this existed. It changed my life. Never heard of it before. All of a sudden, it's all I want now. This amazing hair lotion. I've been
Okay.
stupidly using oil before, but apparently they make products for just my kind of hair. So I've been living my best life with my hair.
Yeah, you see, this is fantastic. I mean, COVID-19 is forcing us to learn all sorts of things and to really come out of our comfort zones. So I think that
Yeah.
that is great. Um, very well. So, Javi, who you for?
Who you for? That's a good question. So I've lived in Bodden town. I live in Bodden town all my life, but when people ask me who you for, then I will automatically say I'm from West Bay because all of my family is from West Bay. And
Right.
so my dad is Burton Ebanks. Many people know him. Mr. Burton, who drives the taxi. My mom, not so much. I work very hard to keep her in the background. She's a very shy person, doesn't like any sort of publicity. So even just kind of mentioning her right here and now is probably somewhat slightly problematic. But my grandparents, Bronson and Ventress Ebanks from West Bay, or Reverend Blackman Road. So, definitely have strong connections to West Bay. His
And we might be
grandfather.
cousins, Javi.
Huh?
After what I found out yesterday, it looks like I'm connected to the Ebankses on my dad's side. So we might be family.
But on behalf of Ebanks, are we claiming you do? Are we? I'm just saying we all the Ebankses have had a recent meeting where we going, you know what? I think we're gonna accept Sandra. We haven't had that meeting yet.
We need to put it to a vote. All
Yeah,
right, my dear folks, all the Ebankses, I need you guys to vote me into the family here.
So yeah, my grandfather's father is Daniel Ebanks from West Bay. No surprise, Ebanks. And I think their mother was Thelma Ebanks, if I'm not mistaken. And honestly, that is as far as I know. I don't know past them.
Mhm. Have you ever thought more about finding out a little bit more about your lineage? I mean, I know your mom is from Jamaica. How much
Yes.
do you know about the Jamaican side of the family?
I know I went to Jamaica for one school year, and so I know my family. My grandmother is still alive. I never met
Mm-hmm.
my grandfather. I was told that he was JLP politician, and he was murdered in his store. That's as much as I know about him. He passed away before I was born. I know the
Mm-hmm.
family on my mother's side. I've met all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I speak to them frequently. Not due to any family conflict. Just due to living in two different
Mm-hmm.
countries. And we also have family from Jamaica who of course live in the United States, and I know them as well. I really don't know, to be honest, past my grandparents much about my lineage in Jamaica. I know that Ebankses have connections to Jamaica. You have many Ebankses in Jamaica. Matter of fact, I met an Ebanks myself away in university in the UK who's from Jamaica. Looks completely like Ebankses and Cayman kind of look similar. You're like, oh yeah, you're Ebanks. I can see it. You got that
Yeah.
Ebanks look. He don't look like an Ebanks like the Ebanks I'm used to. He looked more like you, Sandra. He looks completely different, but yet he shares that Ebanks last name,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew more about the the Ebanks history in Jamaica, and so every now and then when I see him out, I'd stop and we'd talk, and I'd learn a little from him. What I did find out about the Ebankses, he said that the Ebankses in Jamaica are known for drinking strong rum. And I said, yes, so we definitely are Ebankses. All right.
Oh my gosh. So is that a reputational thing then in West Bay that the Ebankses can hold their own when it comes to the
I don't
rum?
know. I don't. I've always heard people make jokes of that, and so
Yeah.
I guess. But it was quite interesting for him to kind of say that unprompted. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
That was hilarious to me.
Okay. All right. Well, you know a little bit about definitely where you're from. Now, Jevy is a university student. You're studying media
Yeah,
production,
film and TV production.
film and TV production.
Yes.
And of course, you guys remember Jevy. He was at one point a co-host over at Cayman Crosstalk, and he was also on-air personality for Cayman 27. And Jevy has done a lot. Jevy does acting. He does
Z99
theater
and
work.
Irate.
Yes, Jevy does theater work. He was in the last production of help me remember what it's called, Jevy.
The last one I did was I think it was Downside Up by Frank McField. Was it Downside Up?
But you were also in the annual what's the annual show
Rundown?
called? Rundown.
No, I wasn't in the last rundown.
You weren't in the last one?
No. I was away at school for the last one.
Yeah.
The last production that I was in was a Dr. Frank McField play, which we took to Trinidad for
the one that featured CMR. You weren't in that one? For some reason I thought you were.
Not the last rundown. The rundown before the last rundown, I was in that one, but not
all
this
right.
one.
Maybe I'm getting my rundowns kind of mixed up here. But Jevy also does some theater work
Yes.
as well. So very good. Good morning to Odette. Good morning, Karen. Catherine has joined us. Miss Irma says, to lovely Cayman upcoming leaders. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So Jevy doesn't have any children as yet that he knows about. Like I said, I always pick guys because
Whoa, nice. You said that I know.
It's a little bit easier to not know, I think, as a man. But so Jevy, do you ever think to yourself? I know Miss Kathy Frazier said this yesterday. Growing up, she's kind of like she doesn't want to marry a family member. Do you ever think about when you're dating, you're having relationships? Because the Ebanks family is so big and diverse, and as you can see, the connections might exist there that someone doesn't carry the Ebanks name any longer, but they're still actually an Ebanks. So do you ever worry that you may end up dating a cousin? I mean, is that a worry for you?
Um, to be honest, I've never quite thought about. I mean, every now and then I'll think about it. The more prevalent one is e-bikes and e-bikes. You like something don't sound right here, and
Yeah.
and every now and then I keep hearing this justification that not all e-bikes are family. I don't subscribe to that. Um, if your last name e-bikes, off bounds. That's just me, and I taking no chances.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I've not really thought of somebody being an Ebanks and no longer having the Ebanks name. That is something to consider. I think it's very easy as the Ebanks to figure stuff like that out, because you can find a grandmother or a great aunt who does this name mean anything, and
Mm-hmm.
if that name means something, then move on.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I've definitely been to family reunions where, like, every time I go, I'm like, this person was here last year, and apparently they were, and I just didn't notice them. So I feel like I constantly learn who I'm family with.
Right. We were sort of engaging in this conversation of who you fought this week because last week we were talking about race relations in the Cayman Islands. I want to get your perspective on this. You're a little bit
Sure.
younger than myself. You're a little bit younger than Alric. Do you recall growing up, and we're going to bring Alric back in the conversation here in a minute because I want to ask Alric the same question as well. But do you recall growing up and having to deal with in the schools any sort of discord based on colorism, which is shades of color, which Cayman seems to be more plagued with sometimes, I think, than just straight black and white. But
Right.
or racism. Did you experience it from teachers or from other people in your schools? Or what are your thoughts on racism in the Cayman Islands?
It exists. We all know it exists, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I did experience it, not to any drastic extent
Mm-hmm.
that maybe some may have experienced it. But I remember going to public school and walking by, we shall not name some of the private schools, and feeling somewhat intimidated by the students. I also
Mm-hmm.
switched. I also went to well, I guess I have to say the name for the point of the story. I also went to Cayman Prep for part of A levels, thinking that I wanted to do computers, and I still much do, but not quite the computers that they were offering. And I
Right.
remember on a few occasions walking into what we call the common room, and I hope that I'm not remembering incorrectly, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember, at least at the beginning, for sure, you could see a clear divide within the common room, that
Mm-hmm.
being the expatriate students on one side and the public school students on another. Over time, friendships developed and that changed. But I
Mm-hmm.
I remember someone in that institution, a student
Mm-hmm.
who I felt treated me differently solely for the fact that I came from public school. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember, every now and then you'll hear somebody make a joke, about a child from the public school. That is an insensitive joke. And I think at the time, and even now probably, it
Yeah.
didn't affect me because, I don't really care what somebody have to say. But I was aware enough to know that that's probably an insensitive statement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that to me is what I is what immediately comes to mind when I think of racism in Cayman. Um,
Right.
but but obviously it exists. One of the things that my mother told me growing up, she said, "You Caymanian, you're black, and you male, so you automatically have three things going against you." And
Mm-hmm.
she did it as a way to prepare me for life. But if we just sit back and think about that for a minute, I don't blame her for telling me that at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But let's just sit back and think about that for a minute. You're black, you
Mm-hmm.
Caymanian, and you male. So you
Yes.
automatically have three things going against you. If that is what a parent feels is necessary to tell their child, you cannot then say that the society doesn't have
Yeah.
a level of racism. It's
Yeah.
clearly racism exists. And
Well, I tell you what, Jevy, I had a
yeah,
politician tell me the exact same thing, except it was you're black, you're a woman, and you're Caymanian. So I
yeah,
was just like, it was something to do many, many years ago in cabinet with some decision that was being made with a notary application that I put in. And when I tried to speak to this individual who happened to be one of the few like really black Caymanians in cabinet at that time, which I say that, but all of us are black Caymanians, so that doesn't really mean anything. But um, that was his response to me as to why my application hadn't been handled justly. And I thought to myself, what are you talking about? But he basically said the same thing. Those are three automatic strikes against you in your journey in this country. And I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. So Alana says, tell them, Jev, you're not remembering incorrectly. And Jasmine also says, Jevy just nailed it. And you know what I
thank you.
find too, Jevy? I'm going to bring Alric back to the conversation here. But one of the things I find as well is that, Alric, are you there with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, awesome. One of the things I find is Caymanians feel more comfortable talking about the fact that we're a classist society as though somehow that is better to treat people differently based on their economic, situation. But I always say to people, classism runs along the lines of race. So
If,
unfortunately,
if I can say, I heard what you just said there, Sandra. That's not been my experience. That persons prefer, classism over racism, and I think that's because Cayman as a society is so small, and for example, the Ebanks family is so large that you have family members who are both extremes of the class system, as in poor and rich, who may just very well live in the same yard together. So I haven't experienced it like that, but I can say I currently am a student in the UK, and a class system is very, very, very prominent over there. I
yeah.
remember going in to the very first day of class, very first day, very first class, and for some reason the teacher thought it was necessary to tell us that we are now considered middle class solely for the fact that we have the opportunity to get an overseas education, and
Okay.
that the persons outside who were poorer and could not afford an education were the lower class.
Wow.
And it was hinted that they were not taken as seriously. That to me is what the class system is, and I don't quite see that as prevalent to me in Cayman, but I wouldn't say that others don't find it that
Yeah.
prevalent in Cayman.
I think where it's perhaps most prevalent, Javi, is you get a little bit more of a pass or a ticket in if you have money. So in other words, say for example, I want to send my child to Cayman International School and I could afford the $1,500 a month or whatever the current tuition is, right? They're obviously going to take my money and my child will be accepted. And so my child gets an in into that community. But that doesn't mean that the race concerns or the race relations disappear. And I know this for a fact, that there have been children of color who are connected to, their parents have money, their parents are well connected, whatever. And they still have to end up leaving that institution because the racism, straight out racism that they have to deal with from the children, which are obviously learning it from their parents, is something that they endure on a daily basis.
Can I challenge you?
In the world of society, you will get invited to certain societal functions, certain fundraisers, if you have enough money, because they want a piece of your money. They're not, listen, money's money, right? But at the same time, those same persons are not going to necessarily invite you into their personal space. Even when they do, it's very precautionary. So, you're not going to really be in my friendship circle. Your kids can't just freely mingle with my kids. Don't your kids ever think about dating my kids, because if they're not white or a certain clearer color, then that's just not going to happen. So when I say that it runs along the lines of, well, like I said, classism and racism are very much linked and very much connected. Because traditionally speaking, Olivier told us about a very successful slave who bought his own freedom yesterday, which I think is a fascinating story. And I want to learn so much about that individual, because that is a very highly unusual situation. But the average person of color would not have had opportunities necessarily at education, at building businesses, at all of these things. So classism is directly connected to where you came from, because as a slave, you just did not get those chances. So when people say that we're a classist society, and I hear it all the time, and people seem to be okay with that, I say, but look at the merchant class in Cayman. Look at primarily who is running the businesses and who is operating, all of the businesses here in Cayman, whether we're looking at retail businesses, grocery stores, medical facilities, all the way down. You could probably name in one hand the number of what we would consider Black Caymanians that are involved in those businesses.
True.
Yeah,
And so there's a definite connection there between race and economic opportunities that are made available to people. And people who break out of that mold are so incredibly unusual that, like I said, we can name them. I mean, let's look at, for example, Canova Watson and Jeff Webb. This is a prime example. Two Black men, both grew up poor by all measures. Jeff had a little bit of a different situation, I think, than Canova, in the sense that his mother was a Caymanian businesswoman who was obviously able to leave him a little bit of a head start in life, but not super rich. And these were self-made men at a certain extent. That's why I was so bothered when I heard the criminal shenanigans that they had been involved in, because I thought these men had an opportunity to influence so many young lives, where young Caymanians could say, even if I am a dark person, even if I'm a person of color, or whatever my situation is in life, look at these two guys who have risen to the top of their game. I mean, Canova was head of his own corporate services company, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, I can't remember what his staff compliments were, but I think he even owned the corporate building that they operated out of. They're both involved in the #1 sport in the world at very high levels. So Jeff Webb, became head of CONCACAF and whatever. It was such a sense of pride to see them rise up. And then to have that eventually tainted, everything that they've done now has been tainted by the fact that they've made very poor choices because of greed, But when they were at the top of their game, of course, they got invited to all the black tie events, and, all this sort of thing. Who else can we think of if we were really thinking hard about, the Black men in this community who were successful businessmen? I think of Don Seymour.
I was just about to say.
But there's very few. So, we can't deny that there's a direct connection between classism and racism, and the two often do go hand in hand, because you are given opportunities based on who you're from, who you know, and oftentimes that is intermingled with the color of your skin.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact. Well, first of all, over the years, Dr. Frank McField has actually spoken about, psychology and race and how everything's interconnected. Unfortunately, nobody really listened to Dr. Frank over all those years, and so a lot of things that Dr. Frank actually predicted actually happened. And they didn't happen because he just happened to predict it correctly. It happened because he did not address the multitude of things that Dr. Frank warned about years ago. We just didn't address it. We kind of thought that certain things wouldn't impact us because everybody came out as rich. But what I kind of want to get to is the whole economics of of this situation. And for me, I kind of start at the top and I say, you know, how are people socialized in Cayman? You know, and based on how you're socialized, what kind of access to opportunity do you have? I think like for me, I see in Cayman opportunity becomes like a club, and then it's hard to get into that club. You know, there are these elite members of these clubs, and you know those clubs tend to be the ones who are sitting on the important boards, who are impacting policy decisions in Cayman. And so, you know, if you're in the club, then your wealth can increase, and you can leave stuff behind for your kids and people coming behind you. But what I found in Cayman too is some people are so desperate to try to get into the club
Mhm.
that they change who they are. You know,
Right.
they start to change their accent. They start to exclude
Mhm.
clients from opportunities. You
Mhm.
know,
Yep.
it's you know I've had to get referred business from overseas. Um,
Mhm.
Notwithstanding that, you know, I do have multiple qualifications. I do have friends who are in, you know, very good positions to give referrals. So they know my qualifications, they know my experience.
Mhm.
I've never received a referral from anyone other than Johan Moxham or Winston Connolly. So when you think about it, you would you would think that people would just recognize you for your qualifications and your
Mhm.
competence and being a good person and being respectful. You would think that would be the key, but the key is how you're recognized, um, if you're a member of the club or not. Um, and if you're in the club, you have access to opportunity, and if you have access to opportunity, that impacts your economic situation.
Mhm.
If one of the issues I found in Cayman is people that have a good economic situation sometimes forget where they come from, and
Mhm.
I guess that's why we go back to your show. You know, like who you for, because um, that will never change. Who you for will never change. So no
Mhm.
matter what kind of nice dress you wear or what kind of suit you put on, you're still core. You know, your background is still there, your history is still there. That is still your
Yes.
core, right?
Yeah.
No,
And trust me, Alric, Caymanians have a way of reminding you of that as well, because I've seen Caymanians do it. I've seen, especially with women, but I guess you know it's across the board. Well, where you'll be walking in the street and they'll be like, "Yeah, you know, now she can drive a fancy car and she can wear Louis Vuitton and carry Louis Vuitton handbags, but you know who her mom is? Her mom is so, and this person, you know, walking around Cayman, da da da." Da. So Caymanians have a capacity to, and it's not that we're just trying to remind people who you are. We're trying to say you're not really what you think you are, because all of this doesn't make you. So it's almost like we're bringing each other down a peg, and we have to remind people of who she's from. She not really nobody. She not come from nobody. You know what
I
I'm
mean,
saying? And again, that is tied into oftentimes color in this community, and the fact that many of us did indeed grow up very poor.
yeah, I mean, Jevy, have you experienced? I know you have a business. I mean, you get a lot of support from other Caymanians in top positions, finding,
Mhm.
you know, you have to really struggle and make your own way.
Um, I was listening to everything you guys were saying, and Alric said something that I agreed with. Is that it's sometimes about who you know, right? And
Mhm.
whilst that is true, in a lot of cases, and it is unfortunate in Cayman that sometimes it is who you know that can help you, move
Or who
on
know
or
you?
develop something. Huh?
Or who know you?
or who know you exactly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, whilst that is true, I believe that you have some people who have a relentless perseverance that no matter the hurdles you throw at them, they're going to find a way to come around it. And so what Alric is talking about is essentially who's sitting at your table, right? Who do you have the connections with? If you're finding that the people at your table are not getting you what you want out of your life, right? It's one thing to say, well, this is the Cayman society, can't do nothing about it. I'm not that kind of person. I'll switch my table. Not to say I'm gonna leave my friends. No. I'm just gonna now start to make decisions, like Alex said, for a business or for my personal life. Now, he asked me specifically about my business and people supporting my business. People have been, people are always supportive of ideas. When people start to support monetarily towards your business, that's a complete other thing. What I've noticed, and I stand to be corrected, and this is for our conversation here, it seems that at times when a Caymanian has a business, right, there seems to be an expectation that they have to prove more of why they're capable, of why they can do the work, of why they're qualified than other businesses. I could be wrong. That could just be me, my observation.
No,
But
listen,
for the most
Jevy,
part,
you're
I
not.
think that.
I was gonna say,
Sorry, I
Jevy,
was
you're
saying for the
not
most
wrong.
part, people seem supportive.
Yeah, because even in the average workplace, as a Caymanian, you have to prove yourself more than everybody else, and this is a known fact. You can be more qualified, more talented, and you will still go into the workplace and have to live up to a very different standard. And that is unfortunate, but that's the reality that we're living with, where oftentimes Caymanians are considered less than in their own country, which is an amazing, in my mind, set of circumstances. Alec, when you were talking about, being a business owner, I'm also a business owner and I'm also a woman. So there's an extra layer of complexity where in a man's world, you're always questioned, even more so. Like, it's amazing how sometimes I will say something and I have people second guessing me and questioning me, where I know if a man had said that, or if one of my male counterparts had said that, it would have just been accepted as a fact. So that is why I have tried personally, in my professional capacity, to always, when I say something, to try to have my facts in order, to be able to back it up with, okay, this is why I'm saying this, and to go the extra
Sandra,
step to really acquire the knowledge.
Sandra, I heard what you said, and I cannot discount your experiences at all. But what I can add to this conversation, growing up as a young Caymanian male, it was apparent to me that opportunities were easier to get if you were a young Caymanian female than if you were a young Caymanian male.
But what kind of opportunities are we talking about here, Debbie? What kind of opportunities? Are we talking about opportunities
work
that becoming
experience,
necessary?
I'm talking work experience, opportunities to
Yes.
get more lessons with the teacher, for example. That's what I'm talking about. Things that were
probably
educationally driven were
I mean,
to be
I
favored
didn't
to female students.
Yeah, I can't talk about the school context at all because, I left when I was in elementary school. But having said that, I could very well see how, in terms of like certain jobs, because corporate Cayman, they need more receptionists, they need more corporate administrators and that sort of thing. Women traditionally have been pigeonholed into those positions. Like, this is what you're good at, this is what you do. But when you do the types of things which I do, which are really none of those anymore, I've left that life behind. I think it does become more challenging. The things that I do, even just being in the content management space. No one expected, let's be honest here, when Cayman Mall Road started, which, by the way, we have an anniversary coming up month end. When Cayman Mall Road started 3 years ago, no one expected this to be, competing with the Compass and Cayman News Service. This was like a joke. and everybody kind of thought of it in that way. And now the second we go live, sometimes we have hundreds of people within the first 2 minutes who are joining a live stream, who engage in our conversations. We have almost 40,000, I think, last time I checked, plus subscribers or followers to our social media platform. So even in the space of media, content creation, as a woman who's running the show and who's involved in that process, you're not expected to be able to do any of those things. Even some of my other businesses. I mean, I have Roque, which we do, streaming content as well. So when I say certain technical things about devices or the industry or whatever, I've had people question me like, well, what do you know about ISPs and how they operate? I'm like, I kind of live this environment. So I think I kind of know probably a little bit more than the average person. Like, this is my business. So when I try to explain certain technical things to people, they're like, well, I don't know about that. And I said, well, okay, since you don't know about it and you're obviously not willing to take my word for it, here's a link. Read it online, because the second you read it online, you obviously believe it over what a female business owner is trying to tell you. So I think that there's struggles that we all face based on a number of different factors. Invariably, I think that it is more difficult as a female woman of color being in any business. And that is why I take my hat off to any businesswoman who, makes a successful go of it, whether it's people like Miss Irma Arch, whether it's people like Sharon Smith, because, you're always thought of, especially if you have husbands that are part of the business or whatever, people always assume that the husband is the driving force behind the business, or the husband is doing all of these things, and you're just there as like the glorified, side rider or glorified secretary or whatever, when in fact it is really the women who oftentimes are coming up with the idea. A lot of times it's the women who are coming up with the financial investment to even start the business, and they're the ones who are really running the business. So I think that those are some interesting add-ons to the discussion that we're having this morning. And everybody has a different experience. So Alric has had a different experience than Jevy. Obviously none of you are women. So, I have a unique and different perspective that I can bring in from that particular angle as well.
Like I say, I mean, I don't think men can ever understand what a woman goes through. I mean, it doesn't matter how many books you read, it doesn't matter how many women you know, as a man, you will never be able to understand the complexities of a woman. I heard what Jevy said, and one of the things he mentioned is just persevering and working hard to get what you want and be successful. I just want to say that is true. However, there are a lot of situations where I have multiple qualifications. For example, if I apply for a job, I have all the responses in writing, right? When I apply for a job, they say that I'm overqualified and I'm too senior. So when you talk about perseverance and working hard,
backfiring.
It actually, people actually then find a way to say, no, you have too much,
Right. You've done too much, yes.
But the solution to that for me is to just start business, right? So I've been in my own business since 2009.
Yeah.
It gives you, it makes you a stronger person.
Yeah.
Having to learn marketing and human resources and business development, and having to learn all those things. You might not have had that same opportunity if you were in a big firm. So you know what I think everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
So I think keep working on yourself. Even though you might get some roadblocks, just keep working on yourself always. And if you can to help another person, then help them, because sharing your knowledge, you should never fear sharing your knowledge. But you know what I learned from squash is, started playing squash at a young age, at 11 years old. And eventually the student beats the teacher, eventually. It happens on so many occasions. A young person just works hard, works on his craft, becomes better, and eventually, that young person's skill exceed the teacher's skill. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's because you just have to keep pushing no matter what obstacle in front of you. Just keep pushing. And one of the things I want to say, as I say, as a man, I don't understand what women go through altogether, but I can tell you my experience working with Cayman woman many years ago. I remember the guys in the office
Mm-hmm.
were just asked, what are their career goals?
Mm-hmm.
And my friend, who's a girl, was asked if she planned to have babies.
Mm-hmm.
The men were not asked that question.
Right.
The thing is, it does take two parents.
Yep.
If you're lucky enough to have the support of a mother and a father, then it takes two people to create that good environment for a child.
Yeah.
So
But
it seems like,
invariably, the primary caregiver, even in corporate Cayman, seems to always be people think, well, it's definitely going to be the mother, and that's going to stunt her development professionally, and her ability to become partner in a law firm. I mean, you look at these law firms, and the vast majority of partners in these, whether it's the law firms, accounting firms, whatever, are actually men. Tamisha says, regarding opportunities, I have to say it was a little easier to get things being a female because it looks good. However, is there room for equal growth as males, etc.? I don't think so. And Christine says, at what cost? Jasmine joins the conversation by saying, I think males and females are just pigeonholed into different roles and expectations. And if I was trying to get a job as a contractor, I'd probably have a harder time than if I was trying to get a job as an office manager, and vice versa for men. Isadora, who is a self-employed woman as well, says, as a woman of color myself and a small business owner myself, I have to agree with you, Sandy. I have had similar experiences. And Doreen has just joined in. Thank you, Doreen, for joining the conversation. So, yeah, I mean, I think those are some very, very, I think, valid points. Women in the workplace, regardless of what the jobs are not paid as much as men. So there is a real discrepancy there in terms of equality of pay, even when the experience and qualifications are exactly the same. And Alric just made an interesting point that a lot of business owners, even myself, are forced to become, I use that word very loosely, but you know what I mean. You're forced to become a business owner because you realize that you're not being afforded the opportunities in your own country to be able to apply for jobs and to be considered equally for those positions. Sometimes it's because of the color of your skin. Sometimes it's because you are vocal and involved in your community a little bit too much. And a lot of corporate Cayman does not like that. They don't want people who they think will be speaking out on any social issues, because that person becomes a bit of a pariah within their organization. So, we've seen numerous examples of that. I think of Jonathan Piercy, for example. Jonathan's a very, qualified young man who's very intelligent, hardworking by all accounts. And Jonathan has been relatively unemployed since the last election. Why is that? How can you be a Caymanian in your own country and not be afforded the opportunity to support your family and to make a living?
yeah,
That's a good question, Sandra, and it's something that we see all quite often. You use Jonathan as a great example, right? But these things like that were a driving factor for me for why I wanted to start my own business. I get it. There are companies that do not want, for lack of a better word, politically exposed persons working for them. Now we hear these. I remember when I was on Crosstalk, I was told on a frequent, near weekly basis that every day I stayed on Crosstalk, I blackball myself more and more and more.
Wow.
But I fundamentally believe from the bottom of my heart, I should be able to express my opinion in my own country. You don't have to like my opinion. You don't have to agree with my opinion. But if the common perception is that by expressing yourself in any way whatsoever is to disbar you from the legal profession, or is to blackball you from another profession, then the only other option is to work for yourself, which is primarily why I chose to try and start a business, because I want to keep both me being able to work and me being able to express my opinion as I feel is necessary. You know, and one of the things I found very struggling when I interned, I loved interning with the government. I learned a lot, and the wonderful people at Radio Cayman and GIS can call me back at any moment and I will come and help them. But when you're working as a civil servant, you got those rules that you have to follow. You can't say and do certain things. That was a problem for me. And in a situation like that, I couldn't hold it against the employer. You know, I get it, you know, we're servants of the people of the Cayman Islands, but I think people have to start making personal decisions for themselves. You know, I'm trying my best to run a business because of what I want, but I think where things get confusing, to say the least, is persons try to get the best of both worlds, right? Get a 9 to 5 job and still be able to call in on Sandra Show, or messaging on Sandra Show, or messaging or calling on Crosstalk, and have their opinions voiced. You know, I know what that feels like, but I think it really is a personal decision. It is what is most important to you. You know, for me, I didn't like 9 to 5s at all. You know, I worked for summer in insurance, and oh my goodness, I hated it. I don't know how people work insurance. Like, kudos to Anna. You know, I hated every single minute of it. I don't even want remember it. Right. And so for me, making the decision to say I'd rather not a 9 to 5 might have been slightly easier, but maybe everybody isn't in that position. Right. And I know that there are companies and even educational scholarships, and you know, whether government or private sector, who sometimes in discreet ways, you know, will say, well, you know, you probably shouldn't say anything about, you know, politics here and there. And to me, that is a fault on the organization themselves. You know, if take just randomly take scholarships, nothing, and I need to make it clear, nothing related to the scholarship that I'm on, because I know people will jump to that quickly, right? But if you're saying that we want to educate persons to be productive members of the society, to contribute productively to the society, on one hand, and then on the next hand saying, but you can't say nothing, shush, 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 shush. That's a conflict of interest, and to put somebody in that position is quite frankly unfair, right? And so everybody has to make personal decisions. You know, I'm hoping that at this point, persons will notice that I'm going to say it. You might like it, but Jevy going to say it, and that is something you have to consider when you are, you know, giving out scholarships or you're employing people. But that doesn't mean that it has to be a detriment.
Right. And
that's,
you know, by comparison, by comparison, Jevy, we see other persons, expats who come here and work in the Cayman Islands, who seem to have the ability to be way more vocal than we are. I mean, I've seen some of these groups that I'm in, whether it's what was formerly K-Moms, that was completely run by expats who've now deserted it because the suggestion was made that they should be inclusive with their cover photo. I mean, heaven forbid, but not every person in the photo be an expat white person, right? So they abandoned it because, you know, that was not acceptable to them. But whether it was that K-Moms group or even the Real Women of Cayman, you see people freely expressing themselves. And I see nothing wrong with that. I lived in the US and I believe in freedom of speech, freedom of expression. But in this country, as a Caymanian, your freedom of expression is being curtailed. I mean, even myself, I'm in the middle of a court battle right now where the fundamental question is, as a content creator, as part of the media, part of that digital space, am I able to say the things that I can say? And am I able to call a spade a spade? So if I say in
Yes,
my opinion that this person XYZ is a con artist or XYZ is a known wannabe pedophile, am I able to say those things even when I back it up? And
I
to be
think,
criminally
Sandra,
charged, I understand what I'm telling you, Jevy. To be criminally charged, not civilly, because of course they can't disprove anything, but to be taken
right,
to a criminal court to say you are guilty of a criminal offense that could see you incarcerated because of you speaking the truth. It's not,
right.
you know what I'm saying? It's not fake
Yeah,
news, which is an offense. It is because you've spoken the truth and you've spoken things that you were able to back up with evidence to then be landed in a criminal court because of that. The people in this country need to really think about what that says in terms of the implications of freedom of speech and what those messages are.
if if I can say though, right? I hear what you're saying, and you make an excellent and valid point. But I want to throw in here too, right? We all have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, but that doesn't mean that the freedom of speech or freedom of expression is exempted from consequence. We all know you can say
Right.
good and bad things, good
Yep.
and bad things, and something may be very, very good and very,
Mm-hmm.
very positive, and you still have that one person who takes it offensively when you didn't mean offense even in the slightest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I say that to say that we can say whatever we want. That's the right to say whatever, but that doesn't mean that it will not have consequences. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that unfortunately what we're seeing is that people are saying things, and whether they're good or bad, and in the most cases they're good, they're getting some sort of consequence for saying it. So that to me is where the confusion is, right? But take me for example. I understand that some of the things I say may offend, even though that's not the intention. I understand that some of the things that I may say may people may not want to hear. It may be discussions that we would rather not discuss.
Mm-hmm.
I take the choice to still say those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the reason that I do it is that it is my hope that persons can look and see intent,
Mm-hmm.
the intent of why something was said, the intent of what caused something to be said. You know, to me, if people look at intent as opposed to just the act, things will change differently. But at the end of the day, it still is a rather personal choice to either say something or not to say something. But I don't think any.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for sure, but it still is astonishing when you look at the facts of the situation, which we're going to discuss a little bit more after I'm finished with my testimony. What it is that we're actually talking about here. So the curtailing of freedom of speech in this country happens on more than one level. So it happens in the employment situation. It happens, you know, even outside of that. It happens in the courts, for example.
Sandra, can you excuse me for just 1 minute? I'd be right back. Give me
Okay.
1 minute.
All right, no problem. So I'm going to just pull him out. I'll read some of your comments in the interim. So Christine says, no, Sandy, they only want people that they can treat like slaves, and Silk Humanians will not stand up for that. So they will get kicked out for no reason, and the others are afraid of their jobs because of their work permits and no laws to protect them. And Jevy, if you don't know someone that knows someone, those kids get no scholarships. Jevy, you're back. We also have Sue saying, Sandy, why did they allow over 200 people on the VA flight and some on permits, new permits? One is a new family of 5. This is just not right to allow this to happen. Hope they're all in quarantine. Well, they should be. And Sue, I did receive some information about that. And I'm trying to get confirmation actually regarding how many persons were on that VA flight. And I did hear it was over 200 persons. So we're going to have that conversation, because I did see that Alva Saku on his social media yesterday did have some questions about that as well. And one of those, I think that family of 5 that you might be talking about has actually been hired into the civil service, which is even more interesting. Christine says, so true, Jevy. And if you're a Canadian, makes it worse. Some people can't take you speaking out. They take it personal, and hell, you got to go by all costs. Yeah, I mean, I think as a Canadian, we don't quite have the same freedom in a lot of different respects than other people do. You know, I see it all the time, even within government. Canadians are afraid to speak up in, you know, staff meetings. They're afraid to go through the proper channels, because the government keeps saying, you know, don't reach out to the media, don't reach out to CMR with your stories, go through the proper channels. But then they get shut down, and nothing happens when they attempt to go through those proper channels of reporting. You know, whether it's discriminatory behavior, whether it's unfair practices, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Alric is back with us. So let's just pull Alric back into the conversation. Alric does remind us that freedom of expression is a right under the Cayman Constitution. I think the point that Jevy was making is it's a qualified right. So in other words, it's not a right that you just have exclusively. I mean, you can't go around saying any and everything that you want. But the question then becomes, how qualified is it? And what we see happening, in my humble opinion, with the judiciary, even in the cases of the case of myself, is that they're trying to set the boundaries, and they're trying to set the bar very, very low about what you can and can't say. And that is indeed very, very problematic. So Sue says, Kristen says, sorry, that Sue, they are in VA. What the hell do you expect? They were talking about the number of persons apparently that came in on the BA flight yesterday, which we are trying to get some more confirmation on. So, right, if you're just joining the show, we're actually about to wrap things up. We've had Jevy Ebanks join us this morning, and Alric Lindsay on a Who You Fa segment. But of course, you know, you can't talk about Who You Fa without getting into all of these other things that certainly make a difference in your life, including, you know, the shade or color of your skin, the name that you carry, whether you're a man or a woman, and so many other inequalities that we have to deal with on a regular basis living in this country. You know, when people say to me, well, you know, you guys don't have it as bad as the US, I think to myself, why would we ever think that that's a good comparison? I mean, in the US, you lose your life over a $20 bill. You know, somebody literally has their knee on your neck for 8 minutes and 45 seconds and draws the last breath out of you for a $20 bill. That's how little your life is worth. So comparing us to them and saying, well, feel good that you don't have it that bad, doesn't give me a whole lot of comfort. Some final words, Alric?
Yeah, I'm actually going to share the wording from the Constitution on your screen. But I do know.
Pull it up.
I do know that a lot of people, well, first of all, I always try to encourage people to try to keep up with the law in Cayman. Yes. But I do realize that not everybody has the time to be reading detailed laws, and not everybody is going to understand all that legal language, which is only there to keep lawyers employed anyway. Confusing wording in the law is just there to keep lawyers employed. So I wish that a lot of things were broken down in ways that, you know, more people could understand. If more people understand their rights under the Constitution and their rights under various laws, we wouldn't have situations like, you know, getting paid pension and health insurance in some jobs, people being dismissed and being asked to sign statements to waive their rights. There are a lot of things that happen that, you know, are a result of people not having access to information, or people not things not being explained to people in the proper way. So what I'm trying to get at also is that some people will say, they don't want to speak out because people get blacklisted.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, if you're not speaking out because you're afraid to get blacklisted and you're afraid to lose your job and lose your income, and then you do that because you want to stay in a particular club to get the economic opportunity and the financial opportunities. Let's say you do all those things, you don't speak, and you do all these things that you think are the right things to maintain your economic situation. The point is, when you look at the people in your new club, which may not include people that look like you, when you look at your new club, look at the financial bottom line. Because if you're saying that you're doing this for economics, you're not speaking up because you want to stay in the club to make good money and have good opportunities. If you're saying that that's why you're doing it, let's look at the real financial bottom line of the people in your new club. Because what you'll find is that you're making $1,000 a month, and the other guy next to you in your club is making $50,000 a month. So this is why when you leave the club on a daily basis, you go home to the ghetto, and your friend in your club goes home to 7 Mile Beach. So we really need to really understand what our rights are under the Constitution, what our rights are under legislation. And if you don't understand, I'm sure that, the people that are in the top positions that do understand, I will beg you to try your best to explain to other people so they also understand, because the whole club thing, to me, it's really why so many people progress who are in the club, and so many people are still struggling on a day-to-day basis. I've seen K-Mine secretaries who been at firms for 30 years and 40 years, and they've seen people come along who become parts of a club, and those same K-Mine secretaries that are in there 30 or 40 years, they've seen people become millionaires just because they were able to join a club that offered that support to them, and offered opportunities to them, made opportunities known to them. So I think we need to really look at that when our goal is, our concern is, I don't want to go because I want to stay in this club. Well, understand that you're not really fully accepted as part of that club, even though you think that's the right thing to do. I think we need to we need to have a deep examination of ourselves, and realize that we, all of us, have a value too. Even if you're in a club, you have a value too, and don't add your value to be a member of a club that doesn't value you. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah. Okay, Jevy, some final comments from you for today?
Yeah, I was listening to what Alric say, and he talking about these clubs that people want to be a part of that can benefit them, right? And not wanting to say something because they feel it'll affect their standings in the club. That right there,
Yes.
Sandra, that is what they're holding over people's head. I can tell you this.
Yes.
They can't hold that over my head. So if you're threatened by what I have to say, and you believe that because I say something, that your reaction is to threaten me to not say something, please know from now it not gonna work. It is not going to work. For me, everybody is differently. So let's just I hate to use them as an example, and I hope that under no circumstance that they be offended, because that is not the case. But just for the purposes of an example, let's just say that for some reason, the scholarship that I am on, I'm somehow threatened that it may go away for something that I have to say. That doesn't threaten me, because if the scholarship is no longer an option, then I'm simply going to do what I have to do to find another way to make sure that I get the money that I need to go away, whether that means that I have to work for myself or apply for another scholarship. Point of me saying this is, if they can use it to threaten you, people will. And so if you make it that it is no longer a threat, they can't use it to threaten you.
Yep.
And
they're gonna try, and that's the point.
They're gonna try.
Is when they try and they continually succeed, they will continue utilizing those tactics, and then there are people who come along, like a handful of us, who say, "Well, those tactics are not going to work on me." But we are not the rule; we're the exception. You know, I have so many people that speak out to me personally, and they're like, "This is what I think," blah blah blah, but I can't publicly say that. I don't want to be ostracized. I don't want my kids in their private schools to be ostracized. I'm living in a particular neighborhood. I don't want to be, so they have bought in, as Alric rightfully said, into that mindset, and it's more of a mindset than anything else. Whether they're trying to acquire a certain lifestyle or certain status in life, and in order to stay where they are, and sometimes it's not even the status is not great. It's just that, I have a government job, so therefore I have no voice, and that has been the mantra that has been beaten into our people consistently, and they believe every single day. So they come to me, they complain, they bring their concerns, but ultimately they're not willing to go out there and say much more. So those of us who can, I think that's why we should loud and clear, and we should make sure that our voices are heard, not just on behalf of ourselves, because to be honest, most of the issues I highlight and most of the things I get involved in have nothing to do with me. I mean, I have a very simple life, and there's very few people that sort of mess with me on a personal level, if you know what I mean. So when I talk about people out there scamming and pedophiles coming after your children, that's not my personal experience. That's a community experience. That's what's happening in our community. But I feel obligated to speak on it because the people who should really be speaking on it don't have a voice.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, when you look at civil service, for example, look how far, that has gone in terms of, civil service not being able to like certain pages or probably follow certain things. I understand that there are rules, but I kind of feel maybe civil service should be given sort of a little more freedom to, say what they feel, because if you fear so much, how you feel, I'm not sure if you're getting a full participation in what we call a democratic process.
Yeah. Well, listen,
we're
just touching on the iceberg this morning, for sure. I think we could continue to have this conversation, and you guys are both welcome to come on anytime. It's just always a matter of figuring out our scheduling, I think. But we've touched on a few things today that hopefully have been thought-provoking for individuals. Christine says, Alric, it's on paper, too much corruption from the top, when if you don't start standing up, we're the minority now, and worse it's going to get. So I think that at least if you have the freedoms on paper, it's a start. When you have those constitutional freedoms, because there are people around the world who don't even have it on paper, so they can't challenge it in any way, shape, or form. And that is why there are important things to know about your rights, as Alric rightfully said. You have to know a little bit about the law. Judicial review is there for people to utilize it. And more, the government is being challenged by way of judicial review. Of course, we know they have a bottomless pit in terms of their resources and ability to fight back. But start the fight. And I think more and more people have to be involved in that process. And I really hate to see when people get discouraged. And, Jevy was talking about this earlier, the concept of resilience. Our people have always been resilient in certain ways, but I think in other ways, especially when it comes to speaking up, we've not really been taught to be resilient in that regard. And so we get beaten down really, really easily. So the more you say something, the more you believe it, the more that becomes a reality. So let us start changing the narrative first and foremost with our thought process. Start thinking differently and stop accepting what people are trying to push down your throat. Giselle says people fear to speak out to maintain their jobs both in private and public sector. And I mean, private and civil service. And yes, that is definitely true. And that's definitely the case. And that's why there's some of us who have to live fearlessly, you know, regardless of the consequences. You've got to do it because we know that there's so many other people out there who don't have that, I don't know if I want to call it a privilege because it's probably more stupid to live fearlessly, but you know, it's just something that you've got to do. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the show today. I want to thank my guests, Alric Lindsay and Jevy Ebanks, for telling us a little bit about who they're for and who you are. And of course, it's been a really interesting segment once again. Tomorrow is Friday, so there'll be a press conference tomorrow. Tonight, we do have an evening show, and I'm going to get into some things about COVID-19 that have been happening throughout the course of the week. And we're also going to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, because a lot has been happening. And when I tell you that someone said the other day that I obviously wasn't around during the civil rights movement, but this is like the civil rights movement part 2, I have to believe that, because the change that is now coming about because of the protests have never happened before. As many protests as we've had, as many race riots and whatever that we've had since emancipation, this time it's different. And we're going to look at why it's different and examine the things that have happened. And I'm telling you, it is a lot. There's a shifting. There's a social shifting in the US. And if this is what it took, then we can only pray and hope that George Floyd's life was not lost in vain. It wasn't lost just for the $20, because a lot of change is now coming about as a result of this. The protesters are still at it. And this is good. I mean, this is going to hopefully change the narrative in a very different direction. But it's difficult to change the narrative of talking about who you are, of 400 plus years of slavery in America and how that has impacted their core. Someone shared with me, and I want to pull this up here on the screen, something that is very, very interesting. This is a like a license, apparently. This license was issued by the state of Missouri in 1922, which provided the holder the legal right to hunt and kill African Americans. In 1922, the state of Missouri nigger hunting license. And it certifies that so-and-so of such and such an address, having paid the license fee, is hereby licensed to, I'm trying to read what that says, something niggers during the open season hereof in Missouri. The license must be, I don't know what that word is, must be carried on person when hunting niggers, and give the holder permission to hunt day or night with or without dogs. So when you talk about, 1922 is not that long ago. This is recent history, folks. So I get personally insulted when people talk about all lives matter. You can't show me any other race when you talk about all lives matter that they actually had the legal authorization and a license that you can apply for to hunt and kill them, hunting a nigger. This is the reality of what was happening in the United States of America. And to a smaller degree, we've had our own issues here with slavery, with racism, and we cannot continue to ignore those things in the name of ignorance and wanting to get along, to go along, to get along, or whatever the saying is, right? So it's time that we find our voices collectively, find our voices individually, and we just get on with it. This fight, hashtag Black Lives Matter, is just not for Americans or the United States of America. It is all over the world. So I'm going to leave today's show with a video that Alric actually did talking about discrimination. I think it's fitting to play that video today. Alric, like I said, is very much involved in the community. He does a lot of, short educational videos, giving his perspective and his viewpoint. And I think they're always very enlightening and interesting. So we'll play that now. Again, Alric and Jevy, thank you guys so much. And we'll do this again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jevy, I didn't use someone else.
That's no worries, bro. I want you
I used the internet, man. It was an internet.
I
Good,
got
good,
you.
good
That's
sense
no
of,
problem.
good sense of humor here.
Call me when you're ready, though. 929-7000.
All right, folks, here we go. A little video production piece by Alric Lindsay.
Discrimination is a complex subject. It affects all nationalities, all ages, all colors, and all backgrounds. In this video, we attempt to summarize what is discrimination and share with you some ideas and how to deal with it. Discrimination can be described as a negative action or attitude towards a group or a person based solely on their characteristics. Characteristics include gender, age, religion, nationality, disability, and gender identity. If you are looking to understand what discrimination is and what practices may exist at work, here are a few examples. Denying interviews, hiring, or promotions, or benefits solely based on characteristics. Exclusion or isolation by coworkers, and deliberately assigning impossible tasks. If you're wondering how discrimination can look for yourself or for your child at school, it could include the following. Creating a difficult or impossible school application process for students based on their characteristics. Penalizing students differently based on their characteristics. There are a few ways to tackle discrimination. Let's go through a few of them. First, research discrimination. Learn more about the issue. Talk about concerns and understand who discrimination may impact. Some people still feel like they're walking on eggshells when a topic of discrimination comes up. The approach is actually quite easy if we encourage each other to respect each other's differences. If discrimination happens at work, the first step you can take is to discuss it with the Human Resources Department. Alternatively, please contact the Government Labor Department or legal counsel for work-related discrimination concerns. If it is at school, speak to a parent or counselor. Let's stamp out discrimination. This means we have to work together to ensure no discrimination and harassment happens in our schools, within our companies, or in any part of our communities. And while you're dealing with all of these issues, please stay safe.